Hαίrε, and welcome. Today we are going to be taking a look at John chapter 2, starting at verse 3, going through the end of verse 4, finishing off this page, which means that this Friday that we're going to have a comparison video between the Greek texts of verses 1 through 4, and of course the Latin text of 1 through 4. Let's go ahead and get started. This is our Greek rubric, everything that we're looking for as we go through the text. We want to make sure that we correctly identify everything, which I sometimes fail to do. I'm sorry about that. And now our Greek. If you recall, as I said in the previous video, we're no longer taking it one verse at a time. Instead, we're taking it essentially half a page at a time. Half of these pages, not the actual Greek pages. That would be a lot. Moving on. Kai hustere santos oinu lege he meter tu Jesu pros auton. Oinon uk ek usin. Kai lege autei ho Jesus. Ti emoi kai soi. Gunai, upo heke he horamu. That's as far as we're going to go today. Very first, we find the word kai, which is nice. It tells us that this entire thing is still connected with everything beforehand. It's always wonderful to find those. And frankly, whenever we see them in the English text, when we see a verse starts with and, just like whenever we see a verse in an English text that starts with therefore or however, we want to make sure that we go back and look at the context beforehand to actually properly understand what's going on. So it's very wonderful that we find these periodically. So it's just a reminder, this verse doesn't stand alone. It's part of something bigger. Moving on. We want to find our verb first because that will tell us who our subject is and what we should expect to go on there. Hustere santos comes from a verb, hustereo, I believe it is. But santos is not the proper ending, so that's not going to be it. Oinu, omicron upsilon, is sometimes a personal ending of a verb, but that doesn't work because oinu here is a noun. And then we come to lege, and lege finally gives us our verb. Epsilon iota right there is going to be a third person, singular, present tense, because lege is our stem. And it's active and indicative, and it means says. Now we know that we want to find a singular subject. Hustere santos initially looks like it could be our subject because it's got omicron sigma there, except that new tau off of husteres tells us that this is actually a participle. And because it's not menos, we know that it is not a first and second declension participle, which would make it passive. But since it's ntos, we know that this is actually going to be a third declension. So os there is not nominative. That one is off our list as our subject. Oinu, omicron, upsilon already doesn't work as a nominative. There's got to be something further on. He here is from ho, he, to. That's on the screen. And it's an article, and he is the nominative singular feminine article, so this could be our subject. Technically, it could also be a predicate, but we don't have a subject beforehand, so that wouldn't make much sense. So our subject starts here. I'm going to use square bracket. Meter. Meter is a noun, and if we take a look up here, we've already parsed it once, so I don't need to do it again. I'm going to go ahead and cross that off. To, so that's not part of the subject. Subject closes right there, and we know this just means the mother. The mother says. Now we could go back to this and see what it's doing, but this is genitive from the omicron sigma third declension. So it doesn't, it's not a direct object, it's not an indirect object. So this is one of the things that we want to look at later. We want to make sure that we get all of our direct objects and indirect objects and possessives involved in those, or the subject, finished before we go and take a look at any of the extra material. Currently, there's nothing for this genitive to own, which means there's something special going on there, which means we want to leave it to the side until we figure out the rest of this sentence first, and then we can come take a look at the quote, difficult stuff. Tu Jesu is what we have next. Tu is from ho, he, to also. This is genitive singular, which matches with Jesu right there, so those two go together. And it's masculine of the Jesus. So this is owning mother. That's good. Then we have pros auton, a prepositional phrase. I'm going to go with the prepositional phrase before we get to this. It's just a little bit easier to handle. Pros takes the accusative in this case because omicron nu right there, which means that we know that this is location towards which. And this is singular. And masculine because Jesus is masculine. The context here would indicate that Jesus is the one being spoken to because we have Jesus right there. Jesus and the disciples and the mother, they're all in the same place. Since auton is singular, disciples doesn't make sense. Since it's masculine and the mother is the subject right here, Jesus is the only other option as the referent. To him. Oop, should capitalize that. Sorry. Trying to get back into the swing of things. The mother of the Jesus says to him. So far, so good. Now we can go and take a look at Hustere Santos Oinu. As I already said, Omicron Sigma there tells us that Hustere Santos is genitive of the third declension, and Antos, since this is built off of a verb, tells us that this is a participle. Genitive, this genitive right here has nothing to own. Genitives can't own verbs, they can't own conjunctions. It doesn't work, which means that the genitive has to be doing something else. So we take a look at this. Hustere Santos as a participle is a verbal adjective. And oinu here with omicron upsilon is also genitive, but it's a noun. And this should be an immediate warning sign to us that we have a special clause happening. But first, let's properly identify anything. So oinos, oinu, so this is genitive, singular, masculine, meaning wine. And there's a little bit more that I have to say about this, but that'll come in a bit. Hustere Santos, this new tau, as I've said like 4 or 5 times already, tells us participle. It's going to be an active participle. Hustere o hustereso. This eta sigma here tells us that this is built off of the aorist stem. Since this is genitive and this is genitive, this has to be masculine modifying oinu. So I'm going to put an arrow there. It's going to be singular, masculine, aorist, active participle. And hustereo has a variety of meanings. Some of them don't make as much sense in modern English. They are give out, lack, or fail. The idea there would be, since we've got wine, it would be run out. And wine, give out. Now, in order to properly translate this, we actually need to understand what this genitive form is here. And it is, wonder of wonders, the genitive absolute, which is, for those of you who know Latin, it's the Greek version of the ablative absolute. I'm going to write that up here. Genitive absolute, which means that we can throw in a word in English to help translate it. It's normally going to be something temporal or causal, circumstantial. So I'm going to do, and either, I'm going to use either the word when or with. With is the lazy person's way of doing it. When, with, and since, there's a ton of different words we can technically use with ablative absolutes and genitive absolutes. I'm just going to stick with these 3. When, with, or since. And when, whine, sorry, give is the wrong, gave out, and with wine, having given out, would be how we'd translate it there, and since wine gave out, the mother of the Jesus says to him. So this works perfectly as a genitive absolute because the subject of the genitive absolute, this wine here, does not appear in the main clause, which starts with lege. Put that there. Not a very good bracket, but you get the idea. With a genitive absolute or an ablative absolute, the subject of the absolute should never appear in the main clause. The absolute is not technically necessary for the main clause to work. Without the main clause, the absolute makes no sense. Without the absolute, the main clause is fine. It just gives us more information. So this is a perfect absolute right here. Frequently in the Gospels, supposedly, absolutes, genitive absolutes, don't follow the rules that way. It can be kind of annoying, I would imagine. But there we go. Now, before we move on to this, I'm sorry, I know I've already been going on for nearly 10 minutes. the last thing that I want to bring up about wine is that the Greek alphabet, the one that we see from classical Greek, from biblical Greek, it only has 24 letters, 2 different versions of sigma, if you really want to throw that in there too. But the old alphabet of Greek had a few extra letters. And the 2 of them that I can actually remember, I think there were 3 or 4, and each had their own specific sound. That they were ancient letters used in Homeric times and before, and we can find some of them, some of the words that had them occasionally with still a hint of them existing, and just the way that we say them. And oinos is one of them. So our missing letters, the ones that I can remember, are this one, which is digamma, and this one, which is copa. Copa is, from what I understand, the letter that started the word for Corinth, Corinth, because the sound was K-O. And digamma here is the Greek equivalent of the W. So it gives us the W sound. And oinos, back in Homeric times, was actually spelled... Oops. I misspelled it. I'll try again. Oinos was spelled this way. Oinos. But through lack of use and the sound somewhat disappearing from the Greek language, digamma disappeared. There's another one that we will probably see a lot. Hos used to be wos. Anyway, interesting historical fact. I love these old letters. Let's move on. Oinon uk eklusin. Since we've got lege here, we know we're entering direct discourse. Quote marks right there. Exusin is our verb. Omicron, upsilon, sigma, iota, nu is our entire personal ending. The nu here is technically an optional nu. We would only find it at the end of a sentence, which we do have here, or if the next letter is a vowel. So this is going to be third person plural. It is present, ech. It's our stem, it's active, and it is indicative. It means they have. Uk is our negative, just means not. Since we have they have, we're going to want to throw the word do right before not. And then oinon is our direct object. Omicron, nu right there makes it accusative, singular, and of course it's masculine. They do not have wine. Moving on. That's the end of verse 3. Our direct quote appears to end right there because we've got lege again. Kai just means and. Lege I'm not going to parse, so we've already got that right there. Says... Ho Jesus is nominative singular masculine. So our subject. Aute with that sub iota we know is going to be dative singular. From autos, aute, auto. It's got the eta right there. We know it's feminine, which means it's referring to the mother. So, why did I do that? To her as an indirect object. Direct discourse right there. And the Jesus says to her, Ti amoi kai soi gunai. T comes from tis ti, and this is going to be the interrogative. And that means we could either translate that as why or what. Why doesn't seem to make sense concerning what she said. So instead, what makes more sense. It's going to be nominative, singular, neuter as our subject. And if we take a look at this, amoi kai soi, the form of Amy doesn't appear, but we would assume esti. I'm going to pencil that in. Yes, it is raining outside, if you can hear that. What esti emoi kai soi. Kai, of course, means and. Emoi and soi are personal pronouns. Omicron, iota, and both of those tell us that they are dative and singular. That one. And that one. And since we've got the epsilon right here, we know that this is emphatic. Had he just said moi, it'd be, what is that? What's that to me and you? But instead, it's what is that to me and to you? So putting emphasis on himself, we know because of that epsilon. To me, to you. Then we have a comma, and our question ends here at the semicolon. Gunai is not going to be a form that we have seen very often before. Instead, what we've got here, because he's speaking directly to his mother, we know that this is going to be vocative singular feminine. And AI, I believe that's because it's from a third declension. Gune, gunaikos. I don't understand why the vocative is gunai, because normally it'd just be the same as the nominative, but oh well. And it means woman. Moving on. Opo a heike he horamu. Heike is our verb here. Epsilon iota is our personal ending, so it's the third person singular. This comes from heko, verb. So it's present, active, and indicative. Or is it? Yes. It's come. So we want a singular subject, which we find in he hora. Be nominative singular feminine. We know because of our article right there being feminine. He said as he pointed to the verb. Oops. The hour. And then mu is the unemphatic form from emoi, but it's this omicron upsilon here tells us that it's actually genitive singular. Of me, or we could just say my or mine. Mine's probably not going to work. And then the last word that we have to worry about is upo. Upo is an adverb, and it's modifying our verb here, just telling us what time. And it means not, hence the u and yet. And to make this make a little bit more sense, I'm going to put the word is. Then we've got the hour of me is not yet come. But from the beginning, so that we have the full context of everything we've translated before, let's go ahead and take a look at that. And on the third day, and on the day, the third one, wedding happened in Cana of Galilee. And the mother of the Jesus was there. But maybe also would be a better translation, honestly. Also, the Jesus was invited, perfect completed action, and the disciples of him into the wedding. And since wine gave out, the mother of the Jesus says to him, they do not have wine. And the Jesus says to her, what to me and to you? Put an exclamation mark right there to show the emphasis. Woman. My hour, the hour of me, is not yet come. And there we go. That's all of our text from this first block of our first paragraph of chapter 2. I hope taking a look at it has been helpful for you. We don't have any other things to look at anymore, and this video has run on egregiously long. Oh my gosh, it's so long. I'm sorry. Have a good day.